All right, so today is Thursday, September 8th at 10 o'clock, and I'm actually going to record this conversation only because I have several students that are unable to make a Zoom meeting. So they're not necessarily watching you, they are watching me, just so you know.
Okay.
But I do want you to be notified that I am going to go ahead and record what we are doing. So I wanted to start the conversation by just kind of establishing purpose. So the purpose of this conversation is bifold. The first purpose is just to introduce myself. So you'll notice that I was noticeably absent from our introduction blogs, and there's reason for that. I realized after teaching this class a couple of times that if I post in that introduction, everybody kind of takes what I post and then copies it and makes it their own. And then you lose the nuance of what people would naturally post about themselves. So for an example, even when people didn't have children, if I would post something like, well, I'm the mother of 3 children, I would get people that would post things like, I don't have any children yet. Well, if people naturally post on their own, people that don't have children don't say, I don't have children. Yeah. So when I kind of butt out of that first introduction, I noticed that people provide a lot of information that they may have not included because I didn't include it. So a little bit about me. I am the mother of 3 children. I have 3 little girls. My oldest is 5. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I am experiencing the other side of schooling for the first time because my 5-year-old just started kindergarten this fall. If you have taken the early childhood gifted or the young gifted course with Kathy Paul, the children that are in that video are my children. So our oldest especially is a very, very intelligent, precocious 5-year-old. She already is reading pages with minimal pictures. She doesn't have quite the endurance yet to do chapter books, but she loves to have chapter books read to her. She's doing multi-digit mathematics problems, already doing things like distributing things fairly or distributing things evenly. So she's starting to move in her multiplication concepts. But she's still very much so emotionally a 5-year-old. So that brings with it all of the challenges of asynchronous development and some of the other battles that come with advocating academically for your child as well as effectively for your child, knowing that those are different things that you're advocating for. I taught in the classroom for 12 years. This year I am not in a K-12 classroom. I am finishing up my PhD at Iowa State full-time. Last year, I had an opportunity come to fruition on a grant where I could pursue my PhD full-time on full scholarship. So that was just an opportunity I felt like I could not refuse. So I have been in the university classroom now at Iowa State for 2 years. And I am working on projects in STEM education, mathematics education, and gifted education. So currently my research focuses on equity in those fields. So in my spare time, you can find me running camps specifically for young female students in STEM. So I run one camp for kids, little girls ages 3 through 8 that is focused on STEM. It's a princess theme though, so it kind of juxtaposes the female stereotype with the STEM stereotype. And then the other camp is a residential camp here at Iowa State where they actually stay for a week and go into labs and are working with female professors and professors of color. That way they can have those role models. So that's a little bit about me. me. The second purpose for this meeting, our first module talked about the history of gifted and talented education. The goal for this conversation is to present the current state, or the state of the union, if you will, of gifted education. And so I'm going to be spending the majority of our time talking about current legislation and policies that drive gifted education, both at the national level as well as the state of Iowa level, as well as some of the local policies that are in place. But before I jump into that, I'm going to give you just a second to ask any questions that you may have about the course, the setup of the course, any of the assignments that you've delved into so far, grading. Do you have any questions at this point?
My only question is in regards to then when we signed up for the other group meetings. So will that be another like virtual meeting like this, or something that we then plan with our groups on our own time?
Yep. So it will be something that you plan during the time that you signed up for with your group. Okay. So what I've learned about teaching this class is that if I just assign groups, a lot of times those groups don't have common meeting times. So instead of assigning groups based on undergrad versus grad or interest or whatever else may be the case, I started actually assigning groups based on common times that work for people. So if you guys choose to meet via Zoom, I recommend that. It is an easy platform to meet with people. But if you guys would rather use Skype or you'd rather do something along those lines, that's fine. But it does have to be something that you can record so that you can send me the link and I can watch your group meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, great question. So one of the things I love about Zoom as a meeting platform is that you can share your screen. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now. The screen I am sharing is my internet browser. And I am specifically sharing with you the NAGC website. NAGC stands for the National Association for Gifted Children. This is the major advocacy organization on the federal level. They advocate for individual students and families, as well as advocating from a lobbyist perspective. They are regularly meeting with senators and representatives to ensure that gifted education is something that is on the national docket. So their greatest achievement in the last couple of years is adding gifted specific language to federal legislation. So last year, after 5 years of not being approved, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, also known as ESEA, or No Child Left Behind, was reauthorized. So we had 4 full years where there was outdated federal legislation that was the guiding policy for education in our nation. People just could not come to a consensus. But finally, we ended up with the bill that was passed last year called ESSA, or Every Student Exceeds Act, Student Succeeds Act. And in parts of the country, it's called ESSA. And in parts of the country, they're calling it ESSA. I'm not quite sure which one will stick at this point in time. It seems the East Coast is leaning towards ESSA. The West Coast is leaning towards ESSA. So I don't really know where we're going to end up. So I'll be using those two terms interchangeably. But the significant part about ESSA for gifted education is that it took pieces of the Talent Act and put it into the guiding policy at the federal level. So the way our system of federalism works, states can supplement federal policy in the legislation. So that means that they can add to it, but states cannot supplant or replace federal policy. So ESSA is in a hierarchical model, is above state policy. So as states start to implement the components of ESSA, they will have to make sure that their state code also includes gifted friendly language, because those high achieving students, those advanced proficiency students, those gifted students will need to be somehow accounted for in state code. So this next page I'm showing you, this is what state code looked like prior to the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, or ESSA. So you'll notice there are only 4 states that both mandate and fund gifted education at the state policy level. Remember, there did not used to be this federal mandate to have gifted ed. So if states had gifted language in their code, it was supplementing that federal language. So now that the federal language has gifted in it, these state codes are going to have to change, because they are going to have to somehow be transparent with how they're going to be accountable for these high achieving students. So this group down at the bottom that says that there are no gifted programs that are mandated, they're going to somehow have to figure out how they're going to alter their code, because there's going to have to be some accountability measure in place for these students under ESSA. There used to be about 9 states that both mandated and fully funded gifted education. We are now down to 4. So this is going to really rock quite a few states that do not have gifted education at all. So going back to the actual ESSA description, one thing that I want to point out that's significant to Iowa specifically is that this reauthorization bill, the ESSA bill in the Senate, was written and sponsored by Senator Barbara Mikulski from Maryland, but it was co-sponsored by Senator Charles Grassley from Iowa. So Grassley has really positioned himself as a champion for gifted education in the state of Iowa. Excuse me. The other thing that's significant for Iowa is that on the House side, Representative David Young was also a sponsor of this bill. So this is a bill that is very, very closely tied to Iowa, and we have some huge champions on our side in Iowa as far as policy goes. When people are asking you about ESSA, it is multiple hundreds of pages, but NAGC has done a fabulous job of breaking it down in this short little question and answer section. So if you have a moment to peruse through the question and answer section, they've really taken kind of those burning questions or the to-knows of this piece of legislation and broken it down into just a couple paragraphs to read, which makes it very doable. The other thing that I want to point out about these charts from the Davidson Institute is that each of these charts are what you're going to need to complete the reflection portion of the assignment. So this is the meeting portion. The other half of the assignment that goes with this meeting is a reflection. You can click on each of these states to get the definition and details of how states run their gifted ed programs. So you will need that. For your homework. The Davidson Institute, just so you know who all these organizations are, is it's run by Bob and Jan Davidson, which is where it gets its name. It's in Reno, Nevada, and it is a magnet school specifically for gifted children. So students from all over the country attend the Davidson Institute to accelerate and to get services specified for them. Things like, kids graduating high school when they're 10. So these are very, very highly gifted students that are attending the Davidson Institute. The thing that we have closest to the Davidson Institute in Iowa would be the Bellin and Blank Center at the University of Iowa. The other piece of legislation that is a major guiding document right now, if we're looking at the state of gifted education at the federal level, is Common Core. So one thing that we have discovered in gifted education with the release of Common Core is that there has been this really, really strong message that Common Core is super rigorous, it's super difficult, the standards are way, way, way high. So people have started to say things like, oh, we don't need gifted education anymore. We're not going to need to differentiate on the upper level because Common Core is so hard. That is not how Common Core is written. It is very, very important for people to understand that Common Core is the floor. This is the minimum expectation that we're expecting students to have mastered and be proficient in at the end of that grade level. It is not a ceiling. So it is completely possible and very realistic that we are still going to have students that are showing mastery in these skills and in this content before the end of the school year, and even at the beginning of the school year. So one thing that Common Core has written in is the option for acceleration. It basically says, if a student is showing mastery in these standards, move them on. That's acceleration. That's exactly what the definition of acceleration is. The other thing that it says is that there are multiple levels of cognitive demand in tasks that are in those standards. So with the acceleration, that's differentiation based on pace. Now we have differentiation based on depth, right? The last way Common Core specifically addresses gifted education is differentiation based on breadth. Okay, so if you look at the interdisciplinary, it's saying, okay, here's the standards in math, here's the standards in science. How can you put all of those together? Or how can you put multiple mathematics standards together? How can you put math and English together, right? So these are doing things based on breadth, not necessarily depth. So it's very important that as gifted educators, we look at Common Core as an ally, not as a detriment, because it is not Common Core itself that says, oh, we don't need gifted education anymore. Common Core is actually very gifted ed friendly. If you hear someone say elsewise, they're misinformed. And it would be your job then to inform them that, nope, that's not what Common Core says. Common Core is the floor. Common Core is not a ceiling. This is a minimum standard. This is not what students could potentially have maximum standards for. So we've talked a lot about the state of gifted education from an academic standpoint. But we know that gifted education are more than just, our gifted students are more than just students, they are people, right? So the national organization that addresses the needs of the effective needs of gifted children is called SENG, S-E-N-G, Supporting Emotional Needs of the Gifted. And SENG does a really fantastic job of kind of the counseling side of gifted. They do a lot with asynchronous development. I talked about that with my daughter a little bit earlier, where emotionally, she's a 5-year-old, but she loves to read advanced literature. Well, there's some conflicts in that, right? I mean, some of the even third grade reading material that's out there has a lot more advanced topics and a lot more, the characters are a lot more developed than she's currently ready for, right? So, Sing does a really fantastic job of talking about some of those things and really how to serve those things. The other thing that Sing has fantastic resources with is working with parents. When you have a parent that says, oh my gosh, I have this high schooler and he's already starting college, but he's in a classroom with people that are 21. Like, how do I address this, right? I have a 14-year-old that's sitting in class with people that are 21. What do I do, right? Like, these are very real concerns for parents. So Sing provides a lot of fantastic resources, and one of probably the best resources Sing provides is parent training. They teach teachers how to start parent groups that are both beneficial for the teachers as well as beneficial for the parents. ITAG, which is our state-wide organization for gifted, has been kind of the motivator behind providing those parent trainings. So I would really recommend, if you do not have a parent group in the district where you teach, Sing would be a great place to start to establish your parent group. And on the other side of things, so everything that I've talked about so far has really been run by professionals, right? Hoagie's is a page that I love because it's run by parents. So it doesn't have a lot of the educational ease that you may see on the other pages. My guess is if you said to a parent, oh, NAGC has some really great information on ESSA, you've lost the parent already, right? That was too much full of educational ease. What I love about Hoagie's is that it's super approachable, especially this Gifted 101 page. This page really has a great way of copying and pasting 3 or 4 sentences and really getting your point across. Along with parents, this is a fantastic way to communicate with new teachers that may not have worked with gifted students before. So if you just say to a student, you know, they have this kid that's acting up in class, you're having a really hard time getting the teacher on board, be a really great place to just say, okay, look, you know, here's some characteristics of gifted students. I would love to tell you about why I think this kid's acting up in your class. Please give me you know, an email. I'll come into your room and provide you some fantastic resources. But if you shoot that teacher 20 minutes worth of PD on gifted, chances are you're going to lose them, right? So I would really recommend using this page as a jumping point for information. Maybe not the end-all be-all of information, but it's a good place to start. If you're new to gifted education, the Educator tab on Hoagie's is a really fantastic resource. You'll notice over here on the left-hand side, there's all sorts of information about grouping, curriculum resources, strategies that you can use for differentiation. There are full units other teachers have provided, as well as suggested books and texts that you could use. So this particular page on Hoagie's is very useful for new teachers that maybe are struggling to know where to start with services for kids. And the other thing that I love about Hoagie's, sorry, I'm in a shared hallway right now.
Oh, no, you're okay.
The other thing that I love about Hoagie's is the Kids Fun tab. There's a couple sections that I love about this page. The first one I love is the Hot Topics reading list. So I talked about my daughter finding literature. This was a really great place for me to turn as a parent to look at what articles are other parents using to really talk to their kids about bullying or talking to their kids about growing up. But there's also novels that have wonderful protagonist characters with gifted characteristics. So it's also a great place to go for suggested novels. The other tab that I really love is the Smart Toys tab. So as a teacher, I always sent out a monthly newsletter to parents just so that they could know what we were doing in gifted ed, what achievement students had done, what contests kids were participating in or could on their own for suggested contests. But during November and December, I always included a gift list. And I always got the names of those toys and gifts that were really great for kids that maybe didn't have traditional interests or were maybe academically and interest-wise not on par with their peers. This Smart Toys button is the best. There's all sorts of really, really fun suggestions under there. So I would really recommend perusing around Hoagie's if you have not already done so. And the last page I'm going to take you to is the ITAG website, or the Iowa Talented and Gifted Association. ITAG is the Iowa affiliate of NAGC, so this is the state version of NAGC. And the ITAG conference is coming up here in just a couple of weeks on October 17th and 18th. And ITAG is a fantastic way to get professional development as a future or current teacher of gifted students. It's also a fantastic way to get really affordable DRAKE credits that will count towards your endorsement. So the credit at ITAG is about 50% off, which is fabulous, and you can earn up to 2 credits towards your endorsement. And if you're a full-time student, the registration is also 50% off the conference. So you're going to be able to get 2 credits of DRAKE credit for under $500, which is actually a smoking good deal. And you get to attend 2 days of the conference, and they feed you breakfast and lunch and snacks. So, right? Smoking good deal. And it's a great way to network and find other people that could possibly be a gateway for future jobs. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so if you are available on October 17th and 18th, I would highly recommend attending. The idea behind the conference this year is nurturing the whole gifted child, so balancing that academic versus those affective needs within gifted. So that's kind of the current state of gifted education. I presented a huge amount of information for you. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask them.
I don't think so, because I mean, based on like in the reading and the stuff that you've presented, so it's now that gifted education has now become more of a federal mandate rather than just kind of like the different state level. So how long will that take for it to all kind of fully be in effect?
Yeah, excellent question. So just for a little point of clarification, gifted education is now federal and state, right? So there will be some states that still supplement the federal legislation. So there will be some states that have more funding. There will be some states that have less funding. There will be some states that don't have any funding at all because funding is state determined, right? So even though ESSA says that there has to be accountability for high achieving students, they don't say there has to be any money to give services. So, right, that becomes a state thing. So I would really, they have a year, states have a year to alter state code so that it is compliant with ESSA. So this next year is going to be really interesting. Iowa, under the Director of Education, Ryan Weiss, just started this process last month. So we should know what this looks like for Iowa by the end of the school year. And most states should know what it looks like for them by the end of the school year. But there's still going to be a significant amount of variance between states because the federal requirements are so broad that, and the funding is allocated by states. So we really don't know what it's going to look like for every state at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So if you have any questions after we depart, feel free to shoot me a text message or an email, and I promise to get back to you. But until then, don't forget to do your follow-up reflection assignment that is in Module 2.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.